Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story. I'm your host, Todd Nesloni, and each week I look to bring you a different guest who has encouraged, inspired, or challenged me in one way or another and bring them on to share some of their story in hopes that it inspires you to tell some of yours. I'm thrilled this week to have my guest, Ella Maya, on with me. Ella, kind of tell everybody who you are.
Hi, I'm Ella. I am a sixth grade teacher in Phoenix, Arizona, and I have just started my 19th year of teaching, which has been obviously the most challenging, but I'm really excited to be here.
Awesome. So, Ella, whenever I talk to anyone, I always love to think back when you were a kid before you entered your career path. Was teacher always in your mind of what you wanted to be, or did you kind of fall into it a different way?
Oh, a totally different way. I wanted to be the next Robin Roberts. I wanted to be on ESPN. I wanted to do sports journalism, and it just didn't work out. And I took a little bit longer I was on the 10-year plan for college, which I always share with my kids because not everybody follows that same path. And I think even though I wished I would have done it sooner, I fell into it. I took some time off school and took a job in an elementary school. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And as soon as I figured that out, I went back to school and it was just smooth sailing from there. And once I figured out, it took a little while, but once I figured it out, I knew what I was meant to do.
So, have you always been drawn to the elementary age students, or have you ever considered secondary?
I did my first internship in a first grade class and I was like, oh, they're so cute and I love them. And then the next practicum was in a fourth grade class. I'm like, oh, these kids are rad. And then I just have fallen into my zone in that fourth, fifth, sixth grade area, the uppers. I really like this age. They start to get a little bit more independent as you go on and you start to see their personalities develop, whether, it's just a fun age to work with. And I don't think I could do anything higher than maybe eighth grade. I don't know if I'm ready for that challenge, but I know I also commend all those teachers of kindergarten, first, second. I don't know how they do it, but they are walking on this earth and should be praised for all that they do.
I could so resonate with your story because I remember doing some work in kindergarten. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the grade for me. I love this age. And then I got a fourth grade job and I was like, what was I thinking? This is even better. And I stayed in fourth and fifth the rest of my time and I loved that age. So I can so resonate with you. Well, I'd love to know, would you ever consider going into a broadcasting thing if the job opened up?
I mean, I'm a huge sports buff, but I think if I could still teach at the same time and maybe, go to a football game or a basketball game on the weekend or in the evenings, I mean, why not broaden my horizons? And that'd be a really cool experience to show my students that, hey, guess what I got to do. But I think, I don't know, I am one of those people that I'm just going to be in the classroom. I don't want to be an administrator. I don't know how my principal and vice principal do it. I don't know how you did it. I'm going to be that person that just, is in the classroom for the entirety of my career as of right now.
And there is nothing wrong with that at all. And so, you said you love sports. Is there a particular sport that you're more drawn to?
Oh, I'm a baseball fan. I absolutely love baseball.
And who's your team?
The Atlanta Braves, and we're getting ready to play the Dodgers today. So we'll see how that goes for the division title. We'll see.
Now, so growing up, were you always into sports, or was there a reason that you fell in love with it that you can remember?
I think my dad wanted a boy, and he got me first, and he got my sister. But I just always grew up around sports. Whenever we traveled, we'd travel somewhere and go on vacation and make sure there was a game, or we wouldn't go at that time. We'd always try to make sure there was some sort of game that we could go to. So I think that's just something that I've always grown up loving. And that's the reason I kind of moved here from New Mexico, because there's no professional sports teams. And I'm also close enough to home, but far enough away. But when I moved here, I was like, well, I have baseball and basketball and football, and I've got it all. So why not?
There you go. I love it. Well, Ella, as everybody who's listening to this now knows, we're in the middle of a pandemic and things have been really different this year. You also were kind enough to be a guest on a recent episode of Honestly Let's Talk about teaching during COVID-19. And so, I'd love to just hear here in this conversation, what do you feel like you've learned about yourself during this time?
Wow. I think the main thing is that I've learned how to be less hard on myself, because there are right now, everything around us is something that we cannot control. And I've had to let go of that control a little bit. And, teachers are always so very, in control of their class and in control of everything, and they want to be. But this time I've learned that I've just had to be a lot less hard on myself. I'm not, I know I mentioned it in that episode. I'm trying not to compare myself to others.
Right.
I'm just going with the flow. And I found that after those first few weeks that were really rough, emotionally, mentally, physically, everything was just rough. I just had to have a talk with myself and just let it go. And once that happened, it just seemed as if even my students felt it. And I had a conversation with them. We're just going to make the best of it while we're here. And things just seemed to click into place. It's not
Right.
perfect. There's hiccups every single day. There's still the uncertainties. But once I allowed myself to just say, you know what happens is going to happen, it just started to work. And I think that little self-talk that I had to have with myself kind of just was the nudge, the gentle nudge that I needed.
I love that. Well, and thinking about, the workload and things being different on top of a pandemic and the racial unrest and social unrest and all this stuff over race and everything going on right now, is there anything that you do that really works for you to keep you grounded or to keep you moving forward instead of letting yourself be overwhelmed by everything going on?
I think personally, it's just making sure that I'm still connecting with my people, my circle of best friends. We make sure we make enough time for each other to Zoom and just sit and talk, and we'll be like, oh, we're only going to talk for a couple hours, and it ends up being like 8 hours. And but it's just needed. We need our people. And I finally ventured out a little bit and took a road trip this weekend to end fall break, and that went up north, and it was so nice just to be outside. And I realized how much we need that connection. I'm like that ambivert where I'm kind of an introvert and I'm kind of an extrovert, but the introvert at the beginning was like, yes, this is awesome. And then I was like, I need people, when I'm like, typically, oh, people, no, and I just needed that connection. We need that connection to make sure that we're staying okay within ourselves, because so many people are finding the not okay moments to be really overwhelming. And I've fallen into that too. And I think just finding that time for yourself has really helped me not get overwhelmed and not get bogged down. I still have my moments, but and I tell my kids that too. I'm like, turn off your cameras, when you're done, go do what you need to do. And it's just that finding time for yourself to be okay.
And I have never been a big exercise person, but we've started this thing since the pandemic hit where every single day we make at least 20 to 30 minutes to go walk around the neighborhood. Like just put the dogs in leashes and walk. And it has been like the thing of the day that I look forward to most, about just getting out and moving for just a little bit, and just disconnecting. And I never thought that I would be somebody who would love to do that every day, but it really has been something. So I'm jealous of your road trip. I might have to try to plan a little road trip to go look at something here soon too. Well, Ella, when you think about your own experience in school as a student, when you reflect on that, what comes to mind? What kind of experience was that? What kind of student were you?
I was a good student. I did really well. I was identified gifted in elementary school, and I, skipped 5th grade in, reading and stuff. And I had a real negative experience with that as well, in which my 5th grade teacher just didn't understand, I guess, the gifted aspect of things. And I was penalized for basically going to a different class for that subject. And in my head that has always stuck out, because I've been teaching gifted for 14, 15 years now. And in my head, I know that that is not the experience I wanted to provide for my students. Just that label does not mean anything that you're any better. And I think that one experience completely just formed this idea of teachers. And maybe that's why I didn't want to be a teacher in the beginning, because that kind of blocked it. But then, I struggled with math once I got into high school and stuff. And then I had another really good teacher that just kind of really helped and paid attention to what my struggles were. And again, I found that groove and was able to succeed. But, I didn't have to study. And so once college came around, that's when the longer time took. I had to learn how to study because I didn't know how. I didn't have to. Yeah. I was younger. And so I think it was this roller coaster, but I know that I always put forth like my best. And when I didn't, it showed. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just kind of, that idea of, okay, I was this type of student, but in order to be that type of student, it's not always going to be easy. And I think that just goes with everything. Just because I was a great teacher that day doesn't mean it's going to be the same tomorrow. So you have to put forth what you want to get out of it.
Agreed. Well, something that you and I also have in common, Ella, is we are both part of the Classroom Champions family. And so you have had several athletes, I believe now, has been in the program. And anybody who's been following me for any amount of time knows that I am a huge fan of Classroom Champions. I never would have thought that would be something I'd be into because I'm not a sports guy. But I love the Olympics and the Paralympics. Like, I watch everything. And so, how did you fall into that? And what has been the coolest experience for you through that?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, this is my 7th year, I think, in Classroom Champions. And it literally was just a coworker who shared it on Facebook and tagged me in it. She's like, this is so you love sports. You love the Olympics as well. Like, I was the one that would stay up, at 2, 3 in the morning to watch them live because I didn't want the spoilers to hit me in the morning, and I wanted to watch it live. And, I went through the process and was chosen to be a part of this program, and I have not looked back. It's changed everything. And I think one of the coolest experiences, there's been a couple, but one was when our mentor, Alana Myers-Taylor, came to visit and visited our class, and the kids were so excited to see her and were so in awe of her muscles and and she brought her husband, who ended up later, a couple years later, being a mentor for a different class of mine. Wow. So we got to see them. And then my students, in the last couple of years, we had Lex Gillette, who's a Paralympian. He is blind, and usually you share what you do with your students on some sort of social media with pictures and everything, but he couldn't see the pictures. So we were listening to podcasts, and we just said, why don't we make a podcast? So we started a podcast for Lex, and cool. That was really cool. And we continued it the next year with our next mentor, and now we have Lex again. So we're actually getting ready to record our first episode of the year. And it's just really exciting to see them, put other things ahead of themselves. And I think that's the one thing that Classroom Champions does, is it broadens their little horizon. They're out of their own world, because so many of our kids don't get that experience to be able to see the world in a totally different way from somebody who's doing things on such a major world stage, and they're their friend and they're their mentor and they're connecting with them. And so I think that just brings an extra level of excitement to, coming to work every day.
Well, even as an adult, I know we even geek out about the athletes, and we're like, oh my gosh, I get to talk to this Olympic or Paralympian or these medalists, or these people who competed on these huge stages, and it's like, they know who my kids are. And so it was always cool for me too because of that. So I love that you have had a similar experience there. Well, Ella, one thing that I always feel that's important about our stories are people who've played a part into creating the people we are today. And I know that when you think about people instrumental in your life, I'm sure there's many names that come up, especially when you think about different periods of your life. But reflecting right now, who is somebody that comes to your mind that you think they were pretty instrumental into creating the Ella we see today?
There's always family, which, that's a given, of course. No matter what your family is like, they're going to be supportive and they're going to be the ones that are there. And so I'm very appreciative of that support that I've received. But I think the one anytime somebody says, who's your favorite teacher, it's going to be Mrs. Wheeler. And I get like a little emotional just thinking about her because she was my third grade teacher. And then she selected a few of us to go loop up with her in fourth grade. And I got to loop up with my kids. And of course I was like, oh, I get to do it like Miss Wheeler. And, she just got me. I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt respected and valued when I was in her class. And I know everyone else that was there did as well.
Yeah.
And I ended up, like, when I took some time off school, I was a substitute teacher, and I was her substitute teacher several times. And then when she retired was when I was leaving New Mexico to come to Arizona, and she gave me so many of her materials, and I still have some of them in my class, and I see her name. And I've spoken to her and still kept in touch with her after all of these years. And that is just someone who has kind of the epitome of the teacher that I've always wanted to be. Because I remember, she taught me how to spell separate with a little story. There was a little couple on the porch. He was named Sep, and the wife said, Sep, a rat, E. And I tell my students that. I've helped them practice their multiplication the way that she did. And it's just that, it just sticks with you, the little things that stick with you. And I think the fact that I had her to go back to, even now, just she's always on my mind. It's just a special connection that I have with her. And I hope she knows that, how much I value and respect her.
I love that. And I love when you can think of those educators who play that role, especially as an educator yourself, because it kind of, like you said, gives you that I want to be that person to somebody else. Well, Ella, you've got such a great story. You clearly are, or you know who you are, and you stand firm in what you bring to the table. And I find when I talk to a lot of people that when people seem to portray that, it definitely is something they had to work towards. Because I know at some point we all deal with doubt and insecurity and wondering if our voices matter, if our stories matter. How do you deal with doubt when it begins to creep in?
I'm still a work in progress on that. I am my harshest critic. I am, I think the thing that I have to remind myself is that I am walking to my desk from my couch in the morning. Currently, I'm modeling what I hope my students feel for themselves. Right. And when they doubt them, I will share my doubts and my struggles with them because I want to see I want them to see me working through it all. And I think that has become the bigger thing. It's taken a really long time for me to deal with anxiety and the doubt and the insecurities. But I think this year, like I mentioned earlier, has really given me that boost of there's so much doubt right now in everything, the political climate, the social unrest, the pandemic, all of these things that are happening in our world right now. And we have to be as stable as we can for ourselves. And I've had to force myself to do that. And I think showing my students it's okay to be unsure, but what are we going to do about it? What can we do about it? And how can we, improve ourselves? Because that's basically, our life goal is we want to be better than we were yesterday. And that has been, that big thing is just trying to talk myself out of the doubt and saying, you know what, you're doing a really good job right now. Yeah. Considering the circumstances, you're doing a really good job right now. And I think that is all educators. We're showing up. And that right there is huge.
It's funny you said that because I found myself having a lot less self-doubt lately because my mind has been so overwhelmed with everything else going on that it's like there's no space for me to doubt because I have to show up, I have to bring it, I have to do what I have to do because I don't have any other choice. And then so it's funny you kind of alluded to that as well. Well, Ella, as we wrap the conversation up, one thing that I always love to end these conversations on is, thinking about the people who are listening or watching today, if they were to walk away with one thing, what would your one thing be for them?
My one thing for them is just and as cliche as it sounds, just smile. Just smile and breathe and know, especially to the educators, especially to those that are working through all of this. And like I said a little while ago, you're showing up. Just show up. And showing up just says so much, because you're showing up for yourself, especially first and foremost. You're showing up for others. And when we show up for others, they're going to show up for us. And whether it's support, a phone call or a text, or your students saying thank you, or turning in an assignment, that's their way of showing up. So as long as we all show up for each other, I think that is what can be the most powerful thing right now, because so many people feel alone and they feel that doubt too. Because again, that uncertainty is just looming everywhere, but there's no room for it right now. We just have to show up for each other and for ourselves.
Well, that is fantastic advice. And Ella, I was so excited to have this conversation with you today. So thank you for coming on and being one of my guests.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you, everybody, for listening or watching another episode of Tell Your Story. Remember, you can check out a new episode every Tuesday on your favorite podcast station or YouTube. So join in next week. And I hope that today's conversation with Ella has encouraged you to get out there and tell your story, because every story matters.